obviously on this podcast every week, we are unpacking fandom and what that means for brands and also the fans that they're trying to cultivate. And we have talked about fandom on a lot of different levels, from both inside the organization. It starts with your leadership and your employees. Fandom extends outward into understanding your fans, maybe using their data appropriately, building them communities and engaging with them there, and how you can use things like humor and authenticity to do that. We've also talked about how fandom isn't a one-time initiative. It's an ongoing process that I hope you're starting to build into your businesses. We have all of that pretty well covered. So today we're flipping the script because my guest is Scott Stratten. And Scott exists to rewrite what we think we know. In fact, he has written 6 books with his wife, Allison, including the titles Unmarketing, Unselling, and Unbranding. So today, let's unpack what we're actually missing about fandom and what might be seemingly obvious to someone like Scott that maybe we're too close to as entrepreneurs or marketers and business leaders. And today we're going to figure out how to show up better for our fans. So Scott, welcome to the Unbrand to Unfan episode of the Brand Fan Show.
Well, I am a fan of yours, and I'm also just a fan in life. And so I love, you posted on LinkedIn. I don't know how to word this without sounding like a jackass. I don't ask to be on podcasts. I've not because I get asked all the time. It's just, I've done so many in the 20 something years I've been doing this stuff. And then when you posted about the show, I'm just like, damn, I want to be on that. And I have not had that reaction to a show. I honestly, I can't tell you if when I have. I just thought the concept, I'm just like, yeah, hell. And that's part of everything in business for myself and for Allison. It's always a hell yes.
Cool.
Right. And you're jumping into stuff. And that to me is like a fandom thing too, right? Hell yes. And when you put that up there, I'm like, what? Well, I want to be on it. And I reached out to you because I'm just like, that's the stuff we love talking about. I'm a fan of stuff that like, it's honestly fanatical of things. And that's what I'm a huge music fan. I'm a huge sports fan. And looking at those things, and I realize I study that stuff so much and I never put it in the front of my mind. So being that my job is doing keynotes at conferences for the past 15 years, I've had the absolute pleasure and privilege to be going to all these different places. And since I'm a huge sports fan, my goal is to go to every stadium, ballpark, and arena in the 4 major sports. And on our wall, just on the other side of the basement here, is 4 scratch-off posters from pop charts with each stadium of each sport. And you scratch off each one you go to. And I just got back from New York, went to a Mets game for the first time ever. But what I'm doing there, I love the vibe. I love the different places. You know what I'm talking about. You go to Wrigley.
Absolutely.
And you sit in the bleachers, you have a dog, and you listen to people rip on the Cubs player that they says doesn't hit well on Tuesdays. Like they know so much. I love passionate fans, Mets fans. Yeah, ridiculous. I just sat there and listened to the belligerence of amazingness coming out of their mouths at people and players. And then I walk around and I wonder, and what I'm actually looking at is what's the fan experience. Mm-hmm. So I actually do a lap of each place, each facility, just to walking around. I want to see it. I want to see, okay, the food selections. I grab a dog at each place, and I just want to see the vibe of the place. And the vibe is what's the experience like for people. And I learn a lot from those places too, because talk about fans. Is there bigger fans in sports or music type of fans? And anything looking at, the latest Taylor Swift concert running around is just like, there's this whole angle of it. And I really want to know, because I love the fandom of what are they doing to connect with their fans and making them feel special, because we have a different world today. And I'm sorry, I've been triggered now, and I'm just going off on a rant because, our cats here don't really, want to hear all this stuff I keep going about. But I'm looking at, we're at Lincoln Park in Detroit. Rest in peace, Chester. We're in Detroit at the arena to see Lincoln Park, and we'd just seen them 5 months ago in Toronto with My Chemical Romance, killer show. We're there in Detroit watching the thing, and before it starts, right, there's this time. You have this time at these shows, just like
it's like this
you have the screens and you have all the songs. And I'm younger. I'm just like, why aren't they playing Linkin Park? Like, you're wondering why they're playing their CD in the arena. You're just like, you idiot. Why would they do that? They're going to come on stage. You're like, oh, I forgot. And then, sometimes you learn all these things. And then it comes up and it's like, pick our encore song we start with.
Ooh.
Text this, right? And in my head, I'm just like, doom, doom, da doom, da doom, doom, da doom, da doom. Shut up! What I'm talking. I'm just like, that's the encore I want to start off with. And then you realize, and you see the votes tabulating on the screen, and
in real time.
In real time, and this is 6, 7, 8 years ago. And you're looking at, and you're just like, oh my God, because what usually happens is people standing around, people waiting, people like, well, when did they actually come on? People avoiding the opener sometimes, people not wanting to go to the merch table, but they want to go when the show's on. And they had the whole floor looking, texting. And then when you texted, hey, by the way, do you want to join the Linkin Park fan club? Just reply with Y to join. And then I go to Kiss and Motley Crue in Vegas years ago, and Kiss blew Motley Crue out of the water. Yes. And the Kiss, but
yes.
but then what does Kiss do? On the screen, join the Kiss Army. Text this, boom, give my email. I'm in. I have 2 emails already in the club. Show hasn't started, because one of the hardest things with fans, and this is what I also love looking at, from publishing to music to everything else, is one of the biggest issues in the classical fan world of again, music, anything that has, is that there's always a wall between it, and they keep the data. So if I have 1 billion streams on Spotify in Austria, I can see that, but I can't see who those people are. I can't reach out to them necessarily. If Amazon says, unmarketing is huge in Bulgaria, I'm like, let me let them know. They're like, oh, we're not telling you who bought it from Bulgaria. You got to pay us for us to email them. And then we're not going to tell you who anyways, but we're just going to let them know you like them. And there's this thing between it that can stop it. So doing those things like the Kiss Army and for Linkin Park, it's like now they have the list, and the gold has always been in that list. And having a fanatical list, oh my, there's nothing better in business.
Yeah. I did that same thing in Pittsburgh, the Take a Lap, when I was there in end of December. I flew in, had dinner with the clients, had just enough time when I got to my hotel, like looked at my watch. Well, Pens Rangers are like in the first period. Well, if I can walk up, a half a mile to the arena and I can get a ticket for like $80 on whatever StubHub.
Yeah.
Is that worth going to see 2 periods of the Pens in Sydney's on the ice and and do that? And I was like, 100%.
100%
gonna do that. And so I did. I walked up.
So good.
Like on a Sunday night to the arena, like buy my ticket. They're like, what? The show's already started. Like I went to the box office. Like, what do you have? Like, what's the easiest thing to do? They're like, it's $140. No, it's like $80 on StubHub. So hang on, scan my ticket. And I did the same thing. I had to go up to the top of the level, top of the arena. So I walked each concourse. I bought myself a puck. I bought myself a drink.
That's right.
But the cultural part of that experience, I think, changes it, right? It's why, like Taylor Swift possibly going from arena to arena to arena, a different city every weekend versus doing a residency in Las Vegas, probably because her show the experience manifests differently in each city based on the culture of the fans who live there.
And of course, and there's also a big part of is that accessibility side of it. And we can have a whole, I can talk for like 5 hours with you about this type of stuff and concerts and the secondary market and that whole world. But it's about, part of that's about, okay, so what is, as any business, right? As getting into just fans in any world, in any industry, it's like, how accessible are you making the product to fans? And when somebody decides to do a residency in Vegas, and by the way, I love those, they're fantastic. Seen a bunch of those shows. I got to see, that's how I saw Britney. Thank you. And the decision is, okay, well, I'm no longer coming to you. You need to come to me. And part of the live experience, I feel, is that, oh my God, they're in my city, or they're in a region that I can get to. And the excitement, like I remember that being just a teenager of just like, oh my, Guns N' Roses is coming to Toronto. and I get to go, and I'm going to go line up and get a wristband and wait for tickets at Sunrise Records here and have all the employees print off the first tickets and keep them and then sell them to us. Like, so this whole stuff has been going on well before all the ridiculous of nowadays. But there's part of that is like, if you really are about your fans, then part of it's going to them to a certain point, because touring is hard and it's draining and it's a lot, but also that's also where they really make their money.
Yeah. I remember the first time I heard it was assumed that you toured as a band to support the album. Mm-hmm. And like, clearly that was never true. And some of us thought so.
Support the label. You support the label. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But number two would be, okay, you flip that, you put out an album. So, that people can see you do the tour, right? They're going to spend that hard-earned money. And sure, that hard-earned money is a little bit harder to earn these days. You need a little bit more of it to get to a Britney or a Taylor or an Adele or that kind of thing, or get to the U2 in the sphere. But there's something about that, like 1 or 0. We can rail against Ticketmaster and the process and the systems, but it's a 1 or a 0. You're either there or you're not. Right. And so at the end of the day, like someone who's really passionate about that experience and having that for the first or 30th time, that's a 1 or a 0. Like, yep, I'm going to pay. I'm going to complain that it's going to cost me $4,800 in fees to tack on to my $48 ticket. But it's a 1 or a 0. I'm going to go. And so that's kind of like that experience of 1. And I've been thinking about that, like how fan experience becomes binary. You're either in or you're out.
And that's part of I think it's probably part of the issue to me. And I watched a good, and forgive me, I don't have the name of the show. I watched a clip on YouTube. It was artists, it's just it's one of the reasons I love YouTube. You get to hear the artists just talk versus you hear the music and somebody else talks about their music. I just love hearing straight from their mouths. And the one person asked them about meet and greets. And how they're just so crazy expensive and so this, and everybody's like, well, artists have to find ways to make and this artist goes, I have no problem having artists make their fans pay for meet and greets. My only stipulation is the fan has to hand you the money at the meet and greet. They have to hand you the $5,000 to your face and say, would you take a picture with me? Because that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And the problem is we're taking these layers away. And it's a great concern to me. I know this is not the kind of the direction potentially of what we're going with it, but there's a big concern that when you try to make only high-priced exclusive experiences, that you ostracize 90% of your fan base. Now, mind you, if you're a luxury product or something like that, then fine. I don't know if Rolls-Royce is too concerned about offending everybody who drives a Civic. But it's like, when companies are like, we are a product or a service for the masses, then don't make what's available. And people are like, well, it's a concert. They have to. I'm like, I understand that, but is it just, is it all about just charging as much as possible, as frequently as possible? Is that all it is? Like the Blue Jays in Toronto here. So the Dome just had some big renovations. They had the cool little outfield. They're doing everything possible to you realize it's still the Dome and it's giant and it's not like all the ballparks in the past 25 years that are built. Like the Dome was built and then Cleveland's like, we got Jacobs Field, and Chicago's like, we got Comiskey, and these are all now only 25,000 seats. And we're like, we have 55,000 seat giant Dome here. So they did all these renovations. It's great. And Jays are a good team and young team, and everybody's getting excited. And they came out to season ticket holders and said, oh, by the way, as of next season, all your seats especially in the bottom circle, they no longer exist. So here's new season. So they renumbered everything. And they're like, so now your seats don't exist, but you can still get great seats. It will be 10 times the amount. Like 10 times the amount for the seats.
Mic drop. Yeah.
And you have to lock into at least 3 years to get these. And it's just like, and I'm talking to friends of mine who have like season tickets and stuff. And it's like one person, they've been in their family since they had the team started.
Wow.
And it's this kind of corporatization of stuff. But also the teams here, the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Raptors, MLSE, were like the first groups to ever do a seat license.
I was lucky enough to get to a Toronto Maple Leafs game during preseason.
Yeah.
For the rest of the world, that experience is like playoff hockey. For the Maple Leafs, it's their preseason. Like the fandom culture up there is incredible. When I was at the PGA Tour, though, we started to look for things that were, like exclusivity didn't have to be expensive to be effective.
Yeah.
That access to restrooms, access to like a fast pass of a line, access to, the kids area to get autographs, like things that actually didn't cost us money or didn't cost the fans money, but had perceived value. And I think that is something that when like for us sports and entertainment fans, we're just used to shelling out money for the experience. But for my local sandwich shop, there's exclusivity that I'm not going to have to pay, $30 to put faux gras on my burger. Like they're going to give it to me in different ways by like knowing what my order is, by adding the extra pickle chips without me having to ask for them, right? By like giving my kid a cookie as a throw in. Like those things aren't expensive and they mean 100%. So much to the customer.
And also it's a great breakdown for in my brain, Lauren. It's about like, because sometimes when we say fan, for me in my head, when you say fan, it's like you're over there, you're watching the experience, versus the ones who understand how to embrace the fan. Because some people hear fan, they're doing the U2 thing, they're doing the velvet rope, stay back, you don't get any of this. Maybe to me, it's fans should be savored. They should be just loved in a way. And I dealt with that so I managed bands in Toronto way back in the late 90s. And that's how I got started in this stuff. And one of the pain points I'd have with artists was be like, after you're done, come out. Mm-hmm. Come out from behind the stage, talk to your fans, take photos, sign shit. There's 36 people in the audience. You're not Neil Young. And by the way, Neil would come out. Right. And they would say back, they're like, no, you need to have that vibe. And I'm just like, it's the rock stars who aren't, who are, but it's like, exactly. It's an attitude and because here's the thing, fans will never forget the interaction or lack thereof. As an example. So I'm, a Metallica fan from, Ride the Lightning, Kill 'Em All, Justice for All, Black Album. Once it gets to Load Reload, that's when I stopped kind of listening, just because life changes and everything else. But that run of albums, I'm a huge fan of. Huge fan of. I also have a small bit of celebrity in the small circles that I run in. So people come up to me in the airport and they're like, yeah, I love this stuff. I read the book and you're like, it's so cool. Awesome. But I mean, like rarely. And so I'm sitting in the airport getting ready to go to a gig. I turn around and there's James Mother Flippin' Hetfield and Kirk Hammett from Metallica walking Pearson Airport towards a gate. And I turned to a 12-year-old child. At the time, I was a 42-year-old grown man. And I'm just like, oh, and I'm like, hey. And I look and I'm like, would you guys take a picture with me? And Kirk Hammett looks at me and just goes, no. And keeps walking. Now, mind you, outside of being a fan, it's like they're running for a flight pretty much. They're going to miss a flight. And I am crushed. And I turn and James Hetfield is right up close to me. He's a big dude. And he just gives me a grin, puts his hand out and shakes my hand and keeps walking. And I'm just like, I love you. Mm-hmm. I hate you, Kirk. I love you, James. And it was that. And I've told it so many times. It was just like that. My brain was just like, it's short circuited. And sometimes you just don't know how to deal with it. And that experience, you'll always, so whenever I'd sign a book at an event or a book launch or whatever it is, my only goal for those things is to treat the 50th person in line the same way I treated the first. Mm-hmm. Listening to them, acknowledging them, appreciating them, because I do all those things. But also you start signing this down. You're just like, okay, you just do, and you're signing the same thing. You're trying to change it up the whole time. And you keep going and you're trying to also got off stage. You're tired. You're just like, when fans approach, and I know it's different because they're individuals, but they can still be fans of companies and brands. When fans approach somebody that they're an actual fan of, they are also in a really vulnerable moment. it's a really vulnerable moment for somebody. At least I know this for me and people that I've talked to, and when they've run into people or run into me, again, on a very, very, very small scale comparatively to other people. And in my head, I'm just like, what are you talking about? You're nervous. What do you mean you're nervous? I am a moron. But then I realized you flip it, and me meeting other people, I'm just like, oh, okay, there's all people.
I was telling this story earlier this week to a group of students that, you know, being at the PGA Tour and running the social media when the retweet became the new autograph, which was slightly before the selfie became the new autograph.
That's right.
Because in the early days of Twitter and socials, we actually couldn't use photos online. That's right. Do you remember that?
140 characters and hard
retweets,
manual retweets. RT at, you know,
oh yeah, dude. Wow, that's a throwback.
Oh, and if your name was too many characters, I ain't retweeting you. I'm sorry. You got it's too long. You're taking away from my
before the button.
That's a hard 140, by the way. Y'all don't understand what we all went through back then. That's a hard 140, no photos, no hashtags, manual retweets. Come on, bring it.
Yeah. So when you're the at PGA Tour, you know, building golf Twitter online, you know, we did that, and we were teaching the players, like, here's how to do it. And we saw the effects of that. I didn't fully get it. Like you were saying, right? Like when you're in that position, like, oh, I'm going to do this and be nice to lots of people.
Yeah.
Then when it was 2013, we were in Palm Springs for the tournament, which had a health insurance sponsor at the time. And so they had a big conference, you know, pre-tournament week of, you know, Clinton Foundation was there, and Dr. Gupta was there, and Jillian Michaels was there. Jillian Michaels puts on a workout class, like a 45-minute, like, let's all go work out in the grass with Jillian Michaels leading us. Lots of good music. This is like height of Biggest Loser. I happened to be 4 months pregnant with my first child, in fairly good shape, and 4 months pregnant. So I go do the workout, make it through the whole thing, tweet about it, obviously, right? Mid workout, like taking a picture, tweeting about it, send it out. And then she retweeted me later that day. And then I don't know if this was manual. It must've been after the button, like in a quote tweet, because she said something about like, you crushed that, right? Because I had mentioned, like, worked out with Jillian, 4 months pregnant, like life is good, you know, whatever. And she retweeted me, and I was like, what? Like floored, like, okay, I get it now. I get what it looks like and what it feels like when
it's a rush. It's a rush,
when at PGA Tour does it.
One of the first stories in the first book was me recounting the first ever brand that actually replied to me on Twitter. It was 2009, maybe, I think, maybe 08 or 09. And I didn't at the brand or anything. All I said was, oh man, I love Cirque du Soleil. I had just seen another show, a huge fan of, because I'm a fan of performers. I'm a fan of that, just the best in their field. And Cirque is that. And I just tweeted it. I didn't at them. Again, real early days, barely any brands were on there as well. And certainly, you know, no celebrities really. It was just people that wanted to talk to each other pretty much. And they replied back and they said, oh, thanks. We love you too. They just said, oh, thanks. We love you too. And I nearly crapped the bed. I'm like, Cirque du Soleil just replied to my tweet. And I got tingles.
And like, that was before they had the whole system of like, we know Scott, he's bought 20,000 tickets.
Any of that. No social monitoring, no clout with the K scores, none of those things, right? It wasn't me checking into the Palms and like, well, your clout score is really high, sir. We'll give you this was me just as anybody else on there, just talking into the ether.
The beautiful days.
The beautiful days. The old man on the front porch yelling at the clouds. But it's like back then was like, that was the difference and the brands that got it in 09 weren't actually brands that got it. They were people who got it. Sure. And then those people moved on to other companies and other brands. And you're just like, oh, I see, because I understand. It's because Jess, who used to be at Cirque du Soleil, now moved over to this brand and this and this, because then I met the people behind it. And it's funny, the people I talk to a lot now, like I was just in Vegas for an event a while ago, and I had lunch with a buddy of mine. But he was the Twitter person for Aria. That's how I knew him. I knew the Twitter person, Excalibur and Aria and MGM. And you'd go and we talk about social media. And of course, I was climbing the ladder in the social space. Well, now he's a VP at MGM, right? Like at the whole thing. And you're just like, I realized it was such an individualized thing because social is so personal and so real time that the people that got it back then just killed because they weren't going by, well, our brand guidelines that says if we receive a fax, this is how we reply. You're just like, it's Twitter. It's a whole different world. You're like, I'm not on Tweezer. We shouldn't have the brand on. And like, so it was like, there was almost like this part was like being brave, because in these brands, you have to, it's ask for forgiveness instead of permission. So you got to have this braveness of going out there. But when you're the first in the field, oh my!
I'm just wondering how you just like verbatim, like my first 4 years at the PGA Tour, like every meeting I was in, like you just brought that to life right there, and just. But
that's
like
that's
the
one
at
of the,
or the hashtag, right? Like the how do we respond?
That is one of the reasons why you're great. Because it's that instinct, right? And that's instinct to be able to go and then do it and try it, because with this world and disruption and how things move so fast, that the incumbents in all these big brands have been incumbents for so long, and it's just like they don't even know what's going on,
right?
And nor do they care until they do.
And then the front line, the people who have been there at the beginning, like I still have PTSD from what bunker situation at the PGA Championship where Dustin Johnson should have won his first major and didn't even get into the playoff, right? Like, because all of a sudden on a Sunday night, you're the one that sees it.
Yeah.
And you're like pulling the fire alarm, like, this is bad. Like,
but it's the brands though. It's also sometimes it's not the smaller brands that people are like, well, the smaller brands can be nimble and new things and disruption. I'm like, no, it's the people. It's the people like you at PGA is just like, no, we can go this way. We're going to go over here. And like, because PGA would be the last, honestly, I think other than maybe polo, the last sport to be like, we need to talk to everyone. Right. Because it's like it's an exclusivity type of thing. It's all these type of, like I did a talk with Lexus last year when they're talking about golf and they're trying to change. They don't always just want to be just for exclusive. They want to bring a larger group of people, and you have this exclusivity. But because I know PGA because of the Potato Growers Association, because they own PGA.com originally, right? The potato growers registered, I think it was in 94 or 95.
Smart.
Right. And they had it for years. And their PGA is like, actually, it's ours. They're like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's our acronym. It's our name. And then for some ungodly amount of money, they finally got it. Which
I'm sure. Yeah. The PGA of America probably needed that one.
The Potato Growers Association has funded their conferences for the next 50 years just on the domain name sale.
Which is good if you're a keynote speaker like Scott Stratton or aspiring like Lauren Teague.
I will ride that PGA.com money any day of the week for sure. But you have to. How do you remain as a brand nimble and flexible and finding where your people are as fans? Where are they talking about you when you're in a institution that is much more classical?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's the people in there. It's the, can I
swear you can.
It's the shit disturbers. Thank you. I don't want to make sure. It's the shit disturbers. It's the ones that are in the pocket. They're like, we could kill it, but I don't want to explain it to them up here.
Well, the hard part is those people who see it will start to do it. And like you said, they move on. And so somebody who's known for that, like a brand who's known and gets the benefits of that, then the expectations of those fans are here. That person moves on. If that infrastructure isn't built in the system, right, isn't part of the process. That's something that Jay and I talked about at the very first episode of this podcast was that fandom is not a project. It's a process. It has to be operationalized at some way. One thing that I'm really proud of is that when I left the tour, I left the notes. Like we left on good terms. I could have lived there, stayed there forever, left on good terms. And the people who came in after me have told me then since, the brand voice narrative that you wrote, I wrote a whole page on We Are the PGA Tour about what the voice sounds like in social and putting kind of the character of our players on. Well, I was 23, 24, 25, 26, tweeting about live golf 7 days a week. Like nobody thought that the players didn't even know that I was, the thing, the voice. Yeah. So I had to put on that quote. I had to build kind of the processes, knowing that I was one and not going to do it forever. And so I think you're right. It's like, it's the people inside the organization The risk, though, is that if you have great people, you either have to find them meaningful, keep them, which we talked about with Joe Mole, or you have to, systemize and operationalize this. And that's true for any brand. Like
any brand.
It doesn't have to be your social media. It's your frontline experience at the sandwich counter. It is how the DoorDash guy represents your food when they drop it off. If the DoorDash guy gets a good interaction with your restaurant, then hopefully he's going to pass that off as he leaves something by the door, right? Hopefully that seamless transition happens, but at all areas of the business, it doesn't have to be a digital experience to be like a really true opportunity to make a connection.
And that's really that here we believe simply that conversation is not a campaign, that you don't do it for 2 weeks. Hey, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk to you. Right. And then bail on it. A conversation takes, and community and relationships take a long time to build, and builds trust, and your fans are the ones. But also, here's the thing is that you can say and do whatever you want as a brand. The fans will have their own conversation about it, and they'll have it publicly, and they'll have it on Twitter, and they'll have it on Instagram, and they'll have it on message boards and forums, and they all still exist, and they'll have it on the subreddit for the brand. And anything Allison and I call it, sometimes it's impenetrable brands, where it's like you have a section of fans that are just like, you could burn down an orphanage. We'd be like, yeah, but is there a sale on today? Like they're so dedicated to these brands. You look at them saying, what brands have the huge fandoms? Well, they all still can be rocked, right? Because our examples 10 years ago were Lululemon, right? Nike, and, Bud Light. You have these fans, and you have these things that it's not a cruise ship that just goes back and forth and it's all good all the time. It's a living, breathing thing. And we can choose, and we don't have to. That's the thing is you and I both know nobody has to talk to their customers or their fans. They couldn't just take the money and walk away. And that's not what I'm here for. It's not what I don't think anybody is here for. Talking to people is not only good to do just on a human level, it's good for business. And people are like, well, then let's show me the numbers. And Lauren, I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of having to prove to pricks that treating your fans is a good thing for business, because I don't want to justify it on a spreadsheet to you. I know it's true. We have the spreadsheets. We see it. We know what loyalty means and does and pays for. And it costs you, and pick the chart, how many times it costs you to get a new customer than it is to keep a current one. Same math for an employee. I am tired of trying to show charts to a lot of MBAs to prove that being good to people is good for business in the long term.
What happens when a business really does want to be authentic and show up in this way, and build trust with their customers, but they're risking also coming across as insincere or inauthentic? How do you help someone stay in the right kind of lane, or put up some guardrails on, like, authenticity is risky. Authenticity can be scary, but here's how to do it in a way that people can't throw it back and poke holes to find the mud.
The problem is, and you're talking to a company here that has the word authenticity in their banner, of what we talk about, but it's a word that means different things to different people. And it's not about that each person talking to fans, talking to customers, has to speak a certain voice. To me, authenticity is how much you let your people say to customers. If a customer calls me and I'm a fan, okay, and let's say I'm going to go to a Detroit Lions game. Just keep it on the straight, full fan level here. And as you can see behind me, there is a Detroit Lions helmet somewhere on this table. So I'm there. And something gets messed up. Whatever, my seats, an experience, food, whatever. So let's say I stand in a line with 42 people. And I just want that foot-long hot dog they make there at Ford Field. I just want the foot-long. Is that too much to have? And I'm standing there, and I get it, and it's actually either cold in the middle or whatever. And I get back to my seat. And this is now a half-hour process. Okay. half-hour process, half time. I'm real pissed. Are your employees empowered to be authentic, to say, you know what, I would be pissed too? And that usher can do something and say, you know what, or they radio somebody or whatever, but they're empowered to say, let's go grab you another one, and you ain't waiting in line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or that they're empowered to be authentic individually. That's where I think there's a huge missing piece, because there's two sides, right? There's a brand voice side, which is especially like we're just talking with leaving PGA, that you can hand everything to them. It's like, I hope this goes into the right hands, right? Because you spend so much time doing that and crafting a voice. And the amount of skill to do that well is beyond what people can even comprehend. Because to be able to follow a document that says this is how you have to be and have somebody understand it is incredibly hard to not only create, but then for somebody to follow and you to enforce that, because all your work's gone if it doesn't work. Just ask Scott, Monty, and Ford.
Yeah.
Man built the thing. And now they're an embarrassment on a lot of social channels, embarrassing to it. So I want brands to look at and saying, are we empowering our people to be authentically themselves, not the brand, themselves, and be human to somebody? So when somebody writes, because here's an example. I happened once with, I won't name the phone company I'm part of, it's Bell. And I called them once and I had an $850 data bill for that month. I'm in Canada and I went to the States. And if you don't know, Canada is one of the highest, most expensive data pricing in the free world. Like, it's just weird. We're just like, oh, I don't know about that, eh? And we just kind of take it. I go to the States for a gig. I come back. I didn't realize I had roaming on. It's better. It's much better now. You know, I can roam for much cheaper. And I called them and I just put my boxing gloves on and I'm like, I am a professional ranter.
You are.
You have no idea. Everything I do is like content too, right? So it's like, this is what happened. So I call them. They're like, hey, Bill Conner, can I help you? I have an $852 data overages bill last month. This is crap. And she says, and I quote, oh, wow, that is crap. Do you mind if I do everything in my power today to try to make this right for you? And I just went, well, that would be fine. That's why I called. So yeah, thank you. I love you. It's like it's 180
completely
in the moment. And to be great at service, you only have to be average because everybody else sucks. But the power in that. And then I think about another time, and then I thought about, when was a corporate person I felt like they had a person out there themselves? And then I realized, oh my God, it happened at a hotel. This is a decade ago in Phoenix. I'm doing a gig. I'm at the JW Marriott, which is much more fancier than my wardrobe. And we're there and we're hanging out. We're chilling. We're doing the thing. I'm in my room now. And this is back when I would call for a wake-up call. Just to, you know, make sure I do mostly opening keynotes, and I need to wake my ass up. So I have one job, just wake up for the gig. And so I call for wake-up call. And it's usually automated, right? And you come in, you press 7 for AM, 7 and then AM, PM. And I call, and somebody picks up. And I'm not ready for this. You ever called somebody and you just want to leave a message?
Yep.
Back in the day when I used to call people, you know, a long time, I was just like, please don't pick up. I just want to leave voicemail and run away. And they're like, hey, Mr. Stratten, you're like a wake-up call? I was like, yeah, that's why I'm calling. And she's like, all right, awesome. What time? And I'm like, 7:30. And she's like, oh, that's really early. And I'm like, what the? I'm like, yeah, too early, right? And she goes, I have an idea. This is a wake-up call I'm booking. I swear to God, this is verbatim. I have an idea, Mr. Stratten. 7:30 is your wake-up call. Why don't I place an order for a carafe of coffee to arrive at 7:40? because I know 7:30 you're going to be waking up. You know, you got to get your stuff together. You got to wipe out whatever's in your eye. But would it make the morning better if you woke up and there was just a whole thing of coffee waiting for you? And I'm like, book it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next morning, the coffee was there at 7:40, and I had no problem paying $193 for a pot of coffee that morning. It just felt so good.
Upsell it, charge it to the room, baby.
That to me is authenticity. And I know it's a different angle when we're talking about a brand being it, but your authenticity comes out of the individuality of some people. The authenticity comes out from especially the front lines, whoever has the most points of contact with your market. So that could be your operation side of stuff and things. That could be your customer service side of things. That could be your cashier side of things. Whoever has the most touch points, I hope, has the most autonomy to make their day amazing. And we don't have to, I don't have to give the Ritz-Carlton example. Like Ritz-Carlton is so famous for it, where they're like, they authorize like up to like a couple grand per incident to either make right or delight for their customers. Now, mind you, their room rack rate's what, $590 a night or whatever, and I'm sure they can afford it. But we don't just have to use that like a Ritz-Carlton type of thing. It's the individuals at these places, and you know why she could do that? I'm guessing, this is all assumption, but I bet she's got a boss that allows it to happen and lets that person be them to whatever extent that is, and then it shows. That's not part of the script, though. That's okay, sir. Would you 7:30? Great. Would you like us to order you coffee for room service as well, or breakfast item, or a bagel? Like that's what. And I'm just like, no.
Right. Yeah. You understand on the other end.
I was already grumpy. I had to call anybody to tell me to wake my ass up. Already on the defensive. And she's just like, she just pulls that empathy out, and I'm just like, you're my favorite person. And it's shocking when that happens. I walk into Lush, a store that if your listeners also are watching, you could tell I don't shop there.
That's not true. They make great beard oils.
Not my thing, usually. I just get bowled over by the lavender smell when I walk in. So I do a secret shop thing for my own research, for just doing my talks and stuff. I'm just like, that's the best type of research to do sometimes, is your own. And I went to a mall called Square One, which is just east of me here. And I went into 20 something odd stores on a Tuesday at 11 in the morning. Have you worked retail?
Oh, yes. It's been a while, but oh, yes.
Yeah, you and me both. How's Tuesdays at 10 and 11 in the morning? It's dead, right? There's nobody there. There's nobody. And so I walked into, so I thought I was going to get the best service possible. And I just felt like an interruption in everything. I'm juking mall walkers in the morning. I'm getting hit with fanny packs. It's amazing. And I go into these stores. I swear I'm interrupting people. One person's like, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "No, I'm good." I went into one store. I couldn't find a person working there. I think legally I became an employee when I was in that store. And so I'm just getting ignored. And I'm like, and this is like 15 years ago. But still, the internet e-commerce was kicking off. People were getting their asses kicked in place. And they're all like, Amazon's the problem. I'm like, also you. And so I'm walking around. And then my final store, I'm so dejected, also happy because I knew that was going to happen, but also dejected because I'm like, I wish a couple. And then I walked into Lush. And I just got this lavender avalanche. And I walk in, and it's just one person working. And she perks up at the cash register and she goes, "Hi." And of course, I've been beaten down 22 stores, and I just look behind me to see maybe it's her friend. I look behind, nobody there. I'm just like, "Are you talking to me?" She's like, "Of course." She's like, "First time here?" I'm like, "Well, what are you trying to say?" I'm like, "Yeah, it is my first time here." She's like, "Let me give you a tour." And she gives me a tour like it's the White House. This thing is 11 square feet.
Yeah. They cram a lot into.
And she's like, "And this is bath bombs. Do you take a bath?" I'm like, "I don't take baths." And she's like, "Oh, here's a bomb." I walked out with $79 worth of soap.
Mm-hmm.
And I got home. My wife's like, "What's that?" I'm like, "I don't know, but I'm going to go take a bath." Right? I always say this, and we'll say it until the last day on stage. I'm saying it. Passion plus knowledge equals profit. If you have people that love the stuff they sell, or just have that personality, I can teach knowledge. You can learn stuff. It's that passion point. That's the contagious I want. That's what I want on my places. And that's what Lush was. And that was that individual at the Marriott that I call. It was just, they were into it. They just felt like the conversation we were having was not an interruption. It felt like their job was to make sure I was taken care of individually, not the brand Marriott, not the brand Bell Mobility, but that person I was talking to. They had my back. And that is one of the things, because I really honestly think brands, really your brand is set much more when things go wrong than when they go right.
Yeah.
When problems happen, when things come up, what do you do? And am I to put the boxing gloves on and we're just going to have to go a few rounds before I'm going to get anything remotely close to what I paid for?
And it's amazing how that can be diffused, right? That approach just diffuses that kind of antagonistic, like, all right, let's go. I'm ready for this, because as consumers, we're conditioned to have to gear up and to stand up for ourselves. And when we don't have to, it makes you feel like someone just put a kitten in your lap. Like, I'm just going to.
So unexpected and so mind blowing.
Yeah. I have a sticker on my car and it says, "Let's be better humans."
Amen.
And that's it. And then I'm like, what else do we need? Like, it's literally one of the ethos of FanWagon is like, we're going to just make a better world. We're going to, by being better humans. Like, that seems like a good answer.
100%. 100%.
Scott, we could do this all day long. I know you kind of do. I know you sit in the basement and you podcast to the ethers. But I do have a preschool pickup coming up in a little while. Okay. So I got to ask you before I let you go, the 2 questions we ask everybody here on the Brand Fan Show. Are you ready, sir?
I'm listening. Yeah, I'm grabbing my fan stuff right now, but go. Yes. Okay.
Well, first of all, you've given us so many stories here. I'm really curious, is there something that you were a fan of early on that you maybe fell in love with, that shaped that identity and some of the decisions you made as you became who you are now?
Yeah. My experience in the music business shaped everything I do now. Unmarketing could have been written by calling everything I learned from Lee's Palace, which is a venue in Toronto. When you have fans that have no money and you have no money, you really learn how to market. You really know how to do things that are not costing, but special. So we started an email VIP list in the late 90s. Everybody didn't have one. It was optional. Like, it was those type of things of how can we make them feel special? And that was it. No money. Fans had no money. What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And that set the tone for my life.
That's cool. Second question. What is your favorite piece of fan wear or apparel? Maybe it's in your closet, maybe it's on your desk, maybe somebody threw it out once it got so holy and raggedy, but we're going to try to find it.
Can you see it?
Oh, wow. You've got to describe it for the
That is the replica Raptors championship ring. And the reason why it's so special to me is because none of my teams have won. I don't think ever. Like, since I've been a fan. So this is my one. Detroit Lions doing well. Here we go. Let's go. But like, this is my one. And when the children didn't understand that once the Raptors won this, all I said was 25 years. And they're like, but the Raptors have been around for 27. I said, no, this has bought me 25 years of happiness. Mm-hmm. I will not complain about the team. I will watch them when they're doing well. If they're stressing me out, I'll turn them off. We got it. And that was so much. And I had nothing to do with it. So it was amazing.
That is a really good one. No one has ever flashed a ring or a replica of a championship ring. I think you take the crown here on the Brand Fan Show. It blows a few of the Boston Red Sox hats we've seen out of the water.
No, we good. I have so much memorabilia of all different stuff because I just love all the things. And I'm just like, no, this because also 3 of our kids were really into it and they were grown. So we got to go to the parade and I got to share it with them. And we watched them win right here. And we watched the Kawhi bounce right here. And that means so much to me. So much more than it was when I was a fan, when I was like 18 or 20.
I think that's the cool part of being able to share your fandom experiences, 100%. Not just with your friends and the things, but like bringing your kids up in that. Our family being Dallas Stars fans, as we are recording this, down 3-0 in our match against our series against the Knights. And last night I was consoling my 9.5-year-old who was sobbing, telling him You can't get swept in game 3. I know it looks bad, but you can't actually get swept in the third game.
I love it.
Well, Scott, let me put a shiny bow on this for our listeners today. This is what I call the TLDL minute, where I recap what we talked about in real time. Scott, you mentioned how much you love fandom, that you're literally going to different stadiums and different venues across sports and entertainment, and you're taking that in, you're taking the laps and just really embracing the intoxication of fandom, which is so cool. Some of the things we talked about today are how to eliminate the wall between your brand and your fans, trying to find some ways to engage when the fans are in the wings or they're waiting for you to appear again, right? Giving someone something to do in that moment. And hey, it's also really good if they are able to get on a list or to kind of stay closer with you, make new connections. I thought it was so smart. You were talking about how to be accessible you are to your audiences, right? So if you are actually about your fans and growing and cultivating this fan base, you actually have to go to them a la Taylor Swift, because fans won't forget the interactions they have with you or the lack thereof. That's because ultimately fandom and the investments, the choices that our fans make are binary. They're either in or they're not. They either have a ticket or they don't. They either are come into the show or not. But we both talked about how exclusivity doesn't actually have to be expensive to be effective. And you sum this up by saying being good to people is good for business. And it's always been that way, which I think is absolutely true. And then we wrap this up saying that people are actually the secret for success, to relate to and connect with your customers and create fans in the moment. When we empower our front lines to be authentic themselves and show up, it's the individuality that wins people over in the moment. And that's your TLDL minute. Scott, thank you so much for being my guest today. It's been such a pleasure to have you on. Let's do it again.
I would love to. I love this. Absolutely. It was even better than I thought it would be. Thank you, Lauren.
My name is Lauren Teague. He is Scott Stratten. And this is the Brand Fan Show, the podcast that unpacks the phenomenon of fandom and has a little fun along the way. We'll see you next time.